welcome to Casually Criterion. My name is Chris.
And my name is Justin. Casually Criterion is a weekly podcast where Chris and I are going to watch a film from the Criterion Collection each week, and we are starting at spine number 1 and going forward sequentially.
Today's episode is spine number 3, The Lady Vanishes by Alfred Hitchcock.
Very cool.
I'm excited.
Yeah. Before we get into the film, each week we want to kind of talk about different movie news that we find interesting or just different topics in regards to a movie, a TV, whatever it is that we're watching that we find interesting. So, Chris, what is your movie news for today?
I have 2 this week. The first one I wanted to talk about was Deadwood. Have you ever seen Deadwood, Justin?
I have seen the first episode of Deadwood.
The first episode? Well, you've got some catching up to do because today it was announced, that today being Monday the 13th, it was announced that Deadwood is set to start filming sometime early next year, the movie, to finish out the series. So the series was 3 seasons long, and it kind of just ended. It's been like 5 or 6 years, if not longer, since they've ended it, but it was great. It was very, they talked in a Shakespearean style. It was very, very good, very awesome, and it has Ian McShane in it, and it has... what is his name from Justified?
Timothy Olyphant.
Yeah, I'm just really excited about a movie on HBO about Deadwood, bringing all those guys together.
So it's they're getting most of the same cast, all of the same cast?
I think they're getting this all the same cast, as far as I know. I'm sure there'll be some differences, some people, but I think that the cast is all up for it. Ian McShane, and let's be honest, the 2 I need is Ian McShane and Timothy Olyphant. And then hopefully they can get, I've seen her, she played Calamity Jane in Deadwood, and I've seen her in other things, but she was amazing in Deadwood. So hopefully she comes back too. Just a really exciting fact that it's going to be coming back.
Very cool. Are you more excited for the movie would you be more excited for like a season versus a movie?
Yeah, I don't know if I'd be more excited about a season or a movie. I guess I'm just excited that it's coming back at all.
Sure.
Now, if it was a season, I think I'm more excited about the movie because it can wrap stuff up. They left stuff kind of open-ended. Like, if they made a season, I'd get to the end of the season and be like, I hope they make another season, So
Sure.
Now, I think the way I feel about it, and I don't know, maybe they'll make more movies. I don't know. But now I feel like they're going to come back, they're going to do this movie, and then they can let it rest in peace.
Yeah. Okay, there's a finality to a movie versus doing another season.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, so I'm excited about it. And you got to watch it, and then we can talk about it.
Yeah, now I guess I have to watch it now.
We're going to make a Deadwood podcast.
Oh. Okay, fair enough. I'm in.
Show's over. Deadwood show.
I told Chris not to make any
You said
any more jokes that the show's over because I think we've done it all 3 episodes up to this one.
His exact words were either don't do it or do it and we have to do it forever.
Yeah, so I guess we have to do it forever, every episode now. I think, how long did we make it? 4-ish minutes before you did it?
You planted it in my head, and there was no way it wasn't going to happen.
Okay. I shouldn't have said anything. All right.
The other thing I wanted to talk about was another bit of news that I'm super excited about, Star Wars.
Ooh.
So Rian Johnson is directing episode 8, and I'm a big fan of Rian Johnson. He did Brick and The Brothers Bloom, and what was the Bruce Willis movie?
Looper.
Yeah, Looper, which I really liked, and I really like Brick a lot too. But I'm a big fan of Rian Johnson, and episode 8's coming out next month. But even better than that, and actually it makes me more excited for episode 8, but they're going to give him a trilogy of movies that don't have anything to do with the original story or anything like that. He's just going to get his own little corner of the Star Wars universe, and he gets to make his own trilogy, which I think actually makes me more excited for episode 8, because they're giving him this vote of confidence. They're like, we like 8 so much that we're going to give you a trilogy. Or the other thing is, if I really don't like 8, I'm going to be like, oh no.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm excited about that. Yeah. What do you, when we actually talked about this last week a little bit, but if you have a blank canvas, other than it's in the Star Wars universe, what do you want to see?
Out of all the Star Wars universe stuff, I've always been intrigued by like the books that take place at like the forming of the Jedi altogether. So like way before like the prequel trilogy. And I've never actually read any of these books. Like it's one of those things. Every time I go to Half Price Books or any used bookstore, like I look for some of those books that fall in there, and I don't see them. So I actually haven't read any of them. So it would be way easier if they just made like a trilogy of movies covering that I could go see instead of having to search out these books.
Yeah, I think that would be pretty exciting. I don't think it'll be this, but I would really love to see some kind of X-Wing movie. There's a series of
around
books
the series X-Wing.
Yeah, well, it doesn't have to be that, but just about the pilots. The fighter pilots. Kind of like a World War II dogfighter type movie, or
Sure.
It's just like Rogue Squadron, I think is what it was called.
Yeah, that was the first of the X-Wing series.
Okay.
The name of the first X-Wing series book was Rogue Squadron.
Yeah, something like that, where it's just. I think that'd be a better spin-off, maybe. But yeah. I'm excited for something.
So maybe like in the same timeline of stuff we've already seen, but just like another part of the
fighter
galaxy.
Pilots,
Yeah,
I don't know.
I'm interested in that. I like all the Rian Johnson movies I've seen so far. I think I like each one that's come out just a little bit less than the one before it, because I really liked Brick. Brothers Bloom I like a lot, but just like a little bit. I like Brick a little bit more. And then Looper I was a little lukewarm on.
Really?
I thought it was good, but not worth watching again, really, for me.
I would watch it again. Out of his 3 movies that he's made already, Brick I think is my favorite. Brothers Bloom is probably my least favorite, and then Looper's in between there.
Yeah, did he do Looper after he directed the 2 episodes of Breaking Bad that he directed that?
I think that
or some of the better episodes of the series.
Yeah, he they wanted him to direct another episode or something along those lines, and he was doing Looper at the time.
Yeah, like everyone I talked to who's like a super huge fan of Breaking Bad, like the Rian Johnson episodes are like the very first.
Yeah, the bottle episodes.
Very first episodes that they cite as like their favorites, and I get it. So yeah, I'm excited for episode 8. I'm excited for his own trilogy.
It'll be exciting. We're gonna get like a Star Wars movie every year from here to eternity.
Yeah, and
a TV show here soon. Did we talk about that last week?
No,
because Disney's gonna do their own streaming service.
Yes, that we did talk about.
Yeah, but they're gonna do a Star Wars series. They've already announced
live action.
Yeah, live action Star Wars series. Sometimes
they say that you can have too much of a good thing.
Yeah, that might be. And that's what I'm a little worried about.
I am easing towards the territory of being.
I mean, Marvel kind of is doing that right now. I mean, like with the Netflix shows and stuff like that.
There's one on like cable TV, and I'm blanking on the name now.
Maybe too much.
Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Yeah. Even if there's too much, no one's asking. You don't have to watch any of it. But
at what point are you missing out on the full story if you don't watch something? Like if I'm gonna watch Arrested Development or Breaking Bad, we'll go get Breaking Bad. I'm not gonna skip an episode in between and be like, I've seen too much Breaking Bad this week. I'm just gonna skip that one and go back to it.
I think at least when it comes to Marvel, you have the Netflix shows, and the Netflix shows and the movies don't really cross. Like maybe they talk about stuff that happens in the movie, but there's not really. You don't have to watch the TV shows in order to enjoy the movies. Now the movies, however, I would watch every single one as you go through, because it's more like a TV show as you're watching them.
Sure.
But so maybe it's going to be kind of similar to that.
This is always a concern in the back of my mind when I keep hearing like more and more Star Wars stuff is coming. Is like when, if ever, is the burnout going to hit?
It's coming at some point, but not yet. I mean, this is kind of what I've always wanted, right? Like as a kid, this is my wildest dream when I was a kid. A Star Wars live action TV show, and lots of movies. So, I'm going to gorge myself for a little while and then I'll throw up.
Yeah, as long as Enough said. Well put. So I guess last weekend, my friend and I were hanging out and we started to binge watch That 70s Show on Netflix, which I've caught episodes like here and there, and I have not seen it like all the way through from like start to finish. So we started watching it because he said it was good. So one thing that like was hard to get past when I first started watching it was the laugh track on the show. Like the show has like a pretty prominent laugh track, at least like we only made it through like the first season. So I don't know if they adjust the levels of it, but in the first season, especially the early episodes, it's like really, really prominent. And I started thinking about how more sitcoms now seem to be moving away from the laugh track. You have like Arrested Development didn't have one, Modern Family, The Office, Parks and Rec. Some of the bigger sitcoms are losing the laugh track, and that's kind of going away. And I think most people that I talk to kind of say that that's for the better, and the laugh track is a terrible thing. But I'm curious what you think. Like, what are your opinion on the laugh track?
When you told me that this was going to be what you're going to talk about, I was actually really excited about it. Because I just recently had my friend recommended this TV show. It's called, I think it's The Black Book. And it's about a British guy that owns a bookstore, but he's like a grumpy bookstore owner, and he doesn't really care about selling books. And I was like, oh, this sounded good. And I went to watch it, and the laugh track was so distracting that like I think I got through one episode, and I'm like, I can't do this.
This is a British series?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And it's fairly old. I think it's fairly old, but I couldn't do anymore. Like because it's just too much, you know. Like, and maybe it's because I'm so used to these new shows, and I can't necessarily go back, and it's hard to adjust to go back. But I always thought it was dumb. I remember my dad complaining about it on MASH. Like maybe MASH wasn't the best subject material. To have a laugh track.
Yeah.
It wasn't even filmed before a live studio audience, so it didn't necessarily make a lot of sense. And I think to that point, the shows that did have a laugh track, like Friends, that 70s show, those are all 3-camera setup shows.
Yeah.
Like and they are filmed in front of a live studio audience, and a lot of the ones that you mentioned that don't are single camera setups.
Yeah.
So I guess what that means is that like when they filmed that 70s show, they had 3 cameras set up while they were filming the scene, and a little bit more like a theater, like a play.
Yeah.
And then the single camera setup would be there's only one camera, and you light each shot, and you have to turn the camera back and forth. And
yeah. So it's more like a film.
Like a film, yeah.
And less.
So maybe it has something to do with the single camera, because it feels more like a movie.
Yeah.
Whereas the other one feels more like you're in a theater, and so you're laughing with people is okay.
Yeah, I think. The live studio audience thing I don't think works for like a single camera show. Maybe there are single camera shows that have watched it, but in my experience, like when somebody actually gets like on a set that's like single camera, like most everything that I've ever worked on, like people are like, this takes a long time. What are you doing? Like, I've asked like family, friends, like come be an extra in the scene and just like hang out in the background of like this party scene. And they're just like, when do we get to go? We've been here for like an hour and a half. And like, it's going to be a while.
You can't really watch a single camera setup. I think the 3-camera setup, they'd run through the whole scene maybe 2 or 3 times. The audience gets to see it, and then they move on. Whereas like when it's a single camera, you get that person's take, and then you flip it over, and you get the next person's take on the other side. So it's not super exciting. No,
yeah, I don't think it's that fun to watch. So, but I guess what I'm thinking about is that, how do you feel about watching shows that have laugh tracks from like the 50s, like Archie Bunker, whatever that show's called, Family, All in the Family?
Yeah.
I Love Lucy, that sort of stuff, because it doesn't bother me when I watch those.
Well, I guess what I would have to say is I haven't watched those in a long time. I don't really go back and watch them. Why not? Yeah. I watched them. My grandma loved I Love Lucy, and we watched it all the time. But that was, when laugh track was very prominent, so it didn't bother me then. But after having moved away and trying to go back, I think I Love Lucy, was that the first one that had the laugh track? Or no?
I don't think so.
What was the one?
I don't know.
The Honeymooners. Did that one have?
Maybe so. I know the laugh track started coming around in like the 50s, I think.
So maybe.
So it could have been those. I'm not
a laugh track expert.
I'm not a laugh track expert. I'm not a like 1950s TV expert or I Love Lucy expert. So I don't know when those.
If any of you are, write in,
yeah.
Enlighten us, and we'll talk about it next week.
Yeah, and you can email us at casuallycriterion@gmail.com with your TV info.
Absolutely, that'd be pretty fun.
Yeah, because I would like to know, genuinely.
Yeah, there's Google, but why Google when you can have it sent to you?
Yeah, why Google when you can start a podcast, put it out there, try to grow your listener base so that you can then learn things.
I knew there was a reason why you started a podcast.
Yeah. But yeah, I do wonder, I guess, if like there's going to be a certain nostalgia, like let's say like the laugh track goes away completely, and then we go back and we watch like that 70s show, or like I Love Lucy, or Friends, anything that has like a big laugh track, and like look at it as like the charm of the day. Because like some people won't watch like a silent film because like there's no sound. Like that's we're so used to sound, and like some people think it's going to be boring, think it's going to be weird, but it has its own charm, even though it seems like might be lesser.
Yeah, there might be a nostalgic factor to it. I don't have that.
Not yet. Yeah, you're in it.
Not yet. I mean, I feel like we're far enough away that it would be nostalgic to go back and look at that. But, yeah, I don't like it.
Okay.
I fall solidly on the no.
Okay.
No more laugh tracks.
Right. I'm gonna wait and see. Well, I guess that's it for the movie news, movie talk. So let's get into The Lady Vanishes.
The English lady, where is she?
There has been no English lady here.
Spoiler warning, we're going to ruin the surprise ending for Lady Vanishes.
Spoiler alert, you've been alerted. Okay, so Lady Vanishes is number 3 in the Criterion Collection. It is directed by Alfred Hitchcock. It came out in 1938. Chris, do you want to talk about Alfred Hitchcock? You got anything?
Yeah.
He's a guy.
He's a guy. Alfred Hitchcock is one of my favorite directors, if not my favorite director. Akira Kurosawa from last week is up there, but I love me some Alfred Hitchcock.
Yeah.
So
what other things has he done?
He's done Vertigo, which is probably my favorite movie.
Yeah, actually, I'm sure you remember, but one of the first times I remember like hanging out with you, where it was like just the two of us, not like at work. We went to we drove like an hour and a half.
Oh yeah.
To go see Vertigo in a theater, and it was my first time to ever see. I think it was my first Hitchcock movie ever.
Was it?
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember that. I forgot that we'd seen it in the theater.
That was amazing. That's the whole reason I ever like opened my mind up to watching something like quote old unquote. Because I don't know, like I grew up around my grandparents a lot, and they would watch a lot of like older stuff, and to me I was like, they're not cool, like all this old stuff they watch, like that must be boring, like my grandparents or something. And that's just how you feel. I don't think my grandparents are boring now. Like I enjoy talking to them, but at the time I thought they were. And so I'd always been like kind of turned off to anything older, anything that wasn't like made like while I was alive, basically.
Right.
Yeah, so thank you.
You're welcome.
You got me into older movies. You
I'm the reason
that.
you're making film right now.
Probably. Probably in
My young protege.
In a way.
There can only be 2.
Yeah.
I don't know. That was weird.
Alfred Hitchcock, he studied drawing, which again,
So far all our guys have
director.
been painters or
painters, drawing, like artists of some sort.
outside of the art of filmmaking.
Yeah. Yeah, true. Filmmaking is an art. I want that on the record that I believe that. But yeah, so he got into the film industry. He started out designing title cards for silent films, which, I don't know, could be fun. I design title cards, and that's my least favorite part of making anything because I'm awful at it. So obviously he had talent.
Yeah. This was his last British film. This is his last film in England before he came over to America.
Yeah, most people kind of know his American work, Vertigo, Psycho, The Birds, and so on. Before he came over to America, he was making a lot of films in England.
He made like The Man Who Knows Too Much.
Man Who Knew Too Much.
Knew Too Much.
Past tense.
Yeah, past tense.
Yeah.
Man Who Knew Too Much, the original one, then he later remade it. But yeah, he made several films over there, and then he came over here. This is kind of I kind of feel like this is his birth movie. This is the movie that, because this is a big success, a smashing success. Mm-hmm. And this is the movie that leads into everything he did and all the great movies that he did. This is like his first baby step into greatness.
Yeah, this is like the launch pad, where he goes off from here to become Alfred Hitchcock from like this film, and I think a little bit on the success of like 39 Steps, which was also really popular. But yeah, after Lady Vanishes came out and was really successful, David O. Selznick, who was a huge movie producer at the time here in America, like approached him and hired him got him to come to America to make movies.
So let me ask you, do you watch Game of Thrones? Have you?
As with every show that you ask me if I've watched, I've seen part of, but not all. I've seen the first season.
The first season?
Yeah.
Do you know the guy that plays Littlefinger in there?
I don't think so.
Do you remember him?
No.
So Michael Redgrave, who is in The Lady Vanishes, looks so similar to Littlefinger from Game of Thrones that it threw me the whole time.
So interesting thing that I was kind of surprised by when I was looking up Michael Redgrave is that Lady Vanishes was his first film.
Yeah, he was a big, prominent stage actor, and his star was kind of on the rise. It was his first film.
Well done.
Yeah.
That guy, he kills it in this movie.
Yeah, he's really good.
Amazing.
I also read that him and Alfred Hitchcock didn't get along very well. Like, coming from the theater, Michael Redgrave wanted a lot more rehearsal, and Alfred Hitchcock wanted spontaneity, and so they did not get along very well. This is also his last Alfred Hitchcock film.
Well, no, I thought he did well. He was like, his performance seemed like supernatural, and like I think he was my favorite performance, like in the whole.
Well,
film.
yeah, maybe performance. Let me ask you, what did you think of the two British guys?
Those guys are amazing. Also, they're just like hilarious. Like they didn't really have a lot of acting. I don't know. I'm not saying that right, but like they're very funny.
Yeah, they're the characters that introduce you to all the other actors or the other characters.
Yeah, they didn't have to like fall in love and have like a romance and like
they're kind of
hang off of a train. They were very dry.
Yeah, they're kind of like R2-D2 and C-3PO. Like all this drama's going on. There's a lot of Star Wars references in this podcast, but they kind of just watch what's going on. There's all this drama's going on around them, and they hold the key to whether or not they succeed or not. I don't know if you read this, but there's a pseudo sequel to this movie that they starred in, which I thought was pretty cool. And I kind of it's a Criterion movie. I saw that.
Night Train to Munich.
Night Train to Munich. That's it. Yeah, but it's a Criterion movie.
Yeah, they actually they sparked characters. I think they played them for maybe one film, maybe a couple of films.
I think there's 2 or 3 films that were based on those two.
Where
characters.
they played the same characters, but then after they didn't want to do it anymore, other actors would come in and they would play those characters as well.
Well, it's like a Laurel and Hardy thing. So like Three Stooges, I guess I should say.
Yeah, so more like Three Stooges. Yeah. So these other actors would come in and they would be that same role, and those guys actually went on to play very, very similar roles, and they would just change the name of the two people in a lot of radio shows. I read, so that like interesting that those two guys like went off and sparked all that, and to Alfred Hitchcock's credit, Lady Vanishes is based off a novel, but those two characters are not in the novel. He invented those and added those into the script himself.
The first act is hilarious, I think. Those two guys.
Yeah, when they're in the hotel before they actually get on the train.
Right.
Yeah.
It is. I really enjoyed that sequence. And those two guys, it's basically exposition. You're getting to know all the characters, but like following those two guys, kind of takes your mind off that you're just doing exposition, and it's really funny. I really enjoyed that.
Talking about like the hotel sequence, there's a whole ordeal with them where they have to take the maids' quarters, and the main character in the movie, his name is Iris, played by Margaret Lockwood. She is with like a couple of friends, and I assume they're American, right? Like
that's what they said.
I believe they're American, and they're rich, they're well off, they're kind of upper class.
Yeah.
One of the things that I thought was really great that Hitchcock does to show like the difference between the two, where like because these two British guys, they're actually like appalled when they're like, we have to stay in the maids' quarters. Like, what is this? After they're told they're staying in the maids' quarters, we see like the 3 American girls in their room, and that scene involves Iris, the main character. When we see her, she's standing on a desk, and her head is like the ceiling is like way above her head. Like I don't even remember seeing the ceiling like in that shot, and she's standing. She spends most of that scene up on a desk, and then we cut to the two British guys, Charles and Caldecott. We cut to them in the maids' quarters, and the ceiling is like right on their heads, and like there's angles from like the ceiling like jutting across, and they hit their heads, and I mean that's like super funny and a just like without saying anything. Like a really great visual way to like show the difference, to like put those scenes next to each other where she's standing on the desk with all that room above her head, and then they're banging their heads on the ceiling. I thought it was really funny and really smart.
What about the visual gag where they come in and we're looking at the newspaper and there's two hands on either side, and they're of course talking about cricket.
They say they're reading it, and you feel like you're just hearing like one person read the newspaper to the other, and the other kind of responding to it.
And then they pull the newspaper down, and they're they're both in bed.
They're both
one
like a
has
small bed.
Yeah, a very small bed. One has the top half of the pajamas on, and the other one doesn't. You just, I don't know. And then doesn't the lady come in at that point too?
The maid comes in.
Yeah, it's just
to do something. I can't remember what, but like, yeah, I just thought that was great. Like a super funny visual gag.
Yeah.
That's like, I don't know, right up there with some of like the best like visual gags and
for Alfred
silent
Hitchcock, I
comedies
think.
and stuff.
Yeah, this was pretty hilarious.
Yeah.
The other thing, Mr. Spencer gets a phone call, and
the hotel.
Yeah.
The guy who runs the hotel. Or
No,
is it
not
someone else?
it's someone else that's staying at the hotel gets a phone call. So the guy that runs the hotel runs off to get Mr. Spencer. And this is taking place in 1938, so right before they're like, how's England doing? You know, they want to know about home. And you think, oh, well, it's about, like, everybody's in a chaotic state. So they want to find out what's going on back home. And then, like, they go to the phone and they want to find out about cricket. And I thought that was a really hilarious gag, too. There's like, we just got to find out about what happened with the match.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's their whole driving force throughout the film. Like,
yeah, that keeps them from admitting that they'd seen the lady.
Yeah. So I guess I don't know if I think we've done this to this point, but brief synopsis of the film. There's this young rich woman named Iris, and she's traveling across Europe on a train, and she meets a woman. Iris gets knocked on the head, and she passes out, and when she wakes up, the woman's gone, and she's trying to figure out where she went, but everyone on the train claims they haven't seen her. And Charles and Caldicott's reason for going along with it, like everyone on the train has their own reasons for saying they haven't seen her, but Charles and Caldicott's reason is because they don't want to delay the train so they can like get back. Right?
They got to make sure they
can
make
catch
it
the
to
cricket match, which is pretty funny. And like you said, I've seen the 39 Steps, but I think that's the only like pre-America Hitchcock film that I've seen. This was my first time to watch The Lady Vanishes.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
What'd you think?
I mean, I think it's great and super interesting. I have like minor nitpicks with it that I'll get into later once we get to like the end of the film. But overall, I really enjoyed it. I had just a blast watching it, which is like I didn't really expect. Like I didn't expect it to be as funny as it was coming from Hitchcock. I remember 39 Steps being kind of funny here and there, but like this one was like half a comedy.
Right. And it's like usually Hitchcock can be funny, but it's a much darker humor. But
maybe. I don't remember laughing at all during Rear Window. That movie
Actually,
I feel kind of creeped out pretty regularly.
Yeah, but I think that there's humorous parts in. Well, this isn't a Rear Window podcast.
It's not a Rear Window podcast, so we don't have to get into that. Is there anything else you want to talk about that takes place like in the hotel that we haven't touched on?
I did like the introduction of the Michael Redgrave character, like with the big stomping, and he's playing the clarinet. I thought that was really funny. And then, of course, him going and playing our heroine or manipulating her into giving the room back to him.
Yeah.
You know, I liked that he walked into the room, kissed the cane, and gave it to her. Like, and that was in case he starts to act up. He's like, it's like giving the girl the mace. You know, like, here you go. I'm gonna be in here, but you've got mace to be safe here.
Yeah. I'm a huge fan of like the romantic comedy, and I enjoy when like two characters just hate each other when the movie starts. You know, like Bringing Up Baby is one of my favorite ones, and like Katharine Hepburn is just like kind of insufferable for the first part of that movie.
Yeah,
and her and Cary Grant just hate each other, and like Michael Redgrave too. Like he's being extremely obnoxious in the room. It's totally understandable on her point to like, please have him stop.
Yeah,
and when she does, he comes in and just kind of weasels his way and like threatens his way back into. Like he threatens to like sleep in the bed with her.
Yeah,
and which I don't think is any sort of innuendo.
I don't know. Yeah, maybe it's an old time innuendo.
Yeah,
But-
yeah. I hope not, because that makes it less funny.
Yeah,
So do you want to move on to when they actually get on the train?
absolutely.
Yeah. So when Iris goes to get on the train, she runs into this elderly woman named Mrs. Froy, and sees her outside of the train. And when she's trying to help her find something on the ground. Is that right?
She's looking for a bag.
Yeah, she's looking for a bag. She's trying to help her find something, and Iris ends up getting hit on the head by a flower pot that is being intentionally pushed off a windowsill, right?
It was meant for Miss Froy.
Yeah, it was meant for Miss Froy, and it hits Iris in the head. And I guess we assume that she's concussed.
Yeah, she passes out.
Yeah, so she passes out, and what I really liked about this part is when she passes out, the camera, it goes into this sort of like double, triple exposure, like special effect, in where like the images all like kaleidoscope and overlap on each other and are kind of like spinning and drifting as she's like getting dizzy and starting to pass out and become unconscious. And it's kind of like, it's really like abrupt and like jarring, and it worked for me. I was like, I think I'm a little dizzy watching this, right? And I think that's interesting considering what Hitchcock did in Vertigo with like the Vertigo shot that he used to like, the spirals
Stewart's hair.
yeah. Well,
Standing
there's,
on him.
he's famous for like this dolly zoom shot, which is done by, you can either, move the camera itself towards the subject, or you can zoom in. But if you move the camera towards the subject and zoom out at the same time, it has this really weird effect where like the person stays in the same spot, but the background like stretches as like you zoom in and out.
I think he did a lot of stuff like this in his movie.
Like watching that, I was like, yeah, Hitchcock it's like early signs of like his talent at like putting you in like this headspace and like portraying these like sort of like things that happen inside your brain and portraying them in film visually.
Yeah. It's definitely early Hitchcock, where you can see the beginnings of what he's going to be later,
Another device that Hitchcock uses throughout the film is like the train whistles and like how loud it is when it happens. When I was in film, at some point we watched Citizen Kane, which I think probably inevitably happens to anybody who studies film. But our professor was telling us that the scene in Citizen Kane where it cuts into like the peacock, and the peacock just like screeches like extremely loud, is like really, really jarring and like makes you go like, what just happened? Our film professor's like explanation of that was that Orson Welles like knew that he had left one of the flashbacks at like a really intense moment, and then we went back to like present time, and now we have to go flash back to where we like to like the same like point in time where we had left off in that like really intense moment in the flashback, and he like had to get the audience back in that moment, like back in that same mood of like on the edge of their seat or like on edge a little bit, like they were. And so he inserted that peacock shot in there and that like giant screeching to make you kind of snap up and like pay attention. And I feel like Hitchcock was doing that a little bit with this train whistle.
Because it was always like when she pulls on the handle, the screeching, like that, all that changes when she stops the train the first time.
Yeah, and there's other times. I think there's times when it happens just like randomly, like here and there, like just at the not just when like she pulls something or someone does something. There's a couple times when like the train whistle just goes and it's like, oh.
So Justin, as we're going through, so she's been hit on the head. They go and have tea. Miss Froy asks for some sugar from our British gentleman, and he's in the middle of of explaining this intricate cricket. I don't understand cricket, but this intricate cricket match, and he's using the sugar cubes, and the look of just like being put out from both of them.
Yeah,
some
like
tea
is to give up our sugar. We're trying to explain cricket with it. The part's pretty good. It's not my favorite Charles and Caldecott moment. My favorite moment is to come later, so cliffhanger. But yeah. So in that scene, Iris asks the elder lady her name. She says Mrs. Froy. Iris can't hear her because of the loud train noise. So Mrs. Froy writes her name on the window, like in like the fog condensation or whatever. then when Mrs. Freud disappears, Iris is going around. She's asking everyone, "Have you seen this? Didn't you see me with this British woman?" And everyone says no, they've never seen her. And I don't know about you, but at a certain point, I was questioning myself, or questioning like whether or not Iris was right, or if all the passengers were right. Like I thought, oh, maybe she is. Maybe like she did get hit on the head, and like imagine this whole sequence and what we saw wasn't true.
Did you? Because I thought it was pretty quick. I mean, this is my second time seeing it, so maybe, but it's pretty quick that we meet the British fellows, and they're like, "Oh, we can't let it." Like this crazy woman with her story. We got to get to the. She was there. She's probably still here somewhere on the train, and we don't want to stop the train because we got to get to our cricket match. Isn't that pretty early on? Or is that a little ways in?
I think it's a little ways.
Okay.
I think it's a little ways in.
Found
I
the
think
Freud at that point.
So I remember having this question in my mind of like maybe she did like imagine this all, and then we see Freud written on the window in the scene. It's really great because we see it before either of the characters do, right? And they're having a conversation, and like we're just looking at it, but like just like turn and look. Just look, like both of you. If both of you just look, then you'll know. And like, of course, Iris sees it eventually. But I think that's the first instant in the movie, at least where I was like 100%, like, okay, for sure.
There's no tricks being pulled on us.
Now we're on board with this, and
that's after he saw the tea wrapper.
That's before.
Oh, it's before.
This is before he saw the tea wrapper. This is when he still isn't sure. Because she sees his name on the window, and she says like, "Look!" And by the time he looks, something's happened with like the fog,
it's gone.
and it's
right.
gone.
You're
and,
right.
and he's like, "Okay."
And then he's convinced by the tea wrapper later on.
Yeah, he sees the tea wrapper much later. This is after that guy throws the trash out, which is they just throw the trash out.
Yeah, that's not
trash out the window. Like
I guess that's
just is one of those things. I've seen in a couple other films where like the characters just like toss their garbage right out like the window of their apartment building, or
things have changed.
Yeah.
Or maybe.
But we look back on it fondly with nostalgia, much like the laugh track of the days when they threw the
trash just out
the window. the golden years.
Right.
Once Michael Redgrave sees like the old woman's tea wrapper on the window, like he's in on it, and they start investigating. And I think you had said that you want to talk about the fight scene. Yeah,
that was a pretty. I mean, it's funny, but it was a pretty good one with the closet where the disappearing closet. Yeah. With them rotating in it. I liked they're wrestling, and she's just like kicking, and then she gets
her during that fight scene is like A+ hilarious to me. She's not doing a thing. Well, she like kicks him on accident. Well, then she finally does something.
She gets a stool and has to stand on it, and then bites his hand.
And like the cow watches the fight scene, and then at a certain point he like ducks away or something.
When they first go into that train car, I heard a moo, and I was like, "What? There's a cow?" Because they hadn't revealed the cow yet. Mm-hmm. Anyways, it was pretty funny. I enjoyed that scene quite a bit. And that's once they're all in, and we realize something's going on, and that's kind of when things start to pick up, and gets cool.
Yeah. And from there, we eventually realize that the brain surgeon doctor is in on the whole thing, and they've brought like someone who's supposed to be one of his patients that he's like transporting to do a procedure on, and they eventually realize that Mrs. Freud has been swapped with that person, and she is now like this nun who's watching over this body. So Mrs. Freud is actually like laid out on this bed, like completely bandaged up, like her face is completely covered. Right. So they don't realize that it's her. But we figure all this out with like 30 minutes left in the movie still, and I was like, well, where do we go from here? When I was watching, because I kind of expected like we're gonna figure all this out in like the last scene of the movie, and then the movie's gonna end, or something like that. But I don't know. I expected like we're not gonna figure out
what's going on until
who did it, if it happened until the very, very end. So I was kind of surprised when it's been an hour and there's still like 30 minutes left in the movie.
Right. They have to figure out how to escape. Yeah. That's kind of the fun part of it. But you're right. Like it's kind of a murder mystery. And then usually it's like the big reveal, and they take care of the bad guy. But in this one, They figure it out. You got 30 minutes left, and they still have to, like, how are we going to escape? You know, like, what exactly is the plan?
Yeah.
You know, that the brain surgeon has?
Yeah.
And why is he doing this? And even then, I think once they do admit it, but even then, the Miss Froy won't explain what she is until later on.
Yeah, like, why is
this?
this whole plot that involves, like, half the people on the train, like, going on for, like, this seemingly harmless, like, friendly old woman? And I mean, I just think I bring up that point that there's like 30 minutes left, is that like this movie just keeps you thinking. Like we don't have another like 25 minutes of like what's going on. Are the people right and there was no Mrs. Froy, or is it Mrs. Froy, or what happened to Mrs. Froy? It's like we know at that point, and like then the movie changes. So like it keeps turning. Like we have like that, you know, going back to the beginning, we have like the big hotel scene. Where's this going? And then the train, and then Mrs. Froy is gone. Then we think she might be crazy. Now we know she's not crazy, and then all of a sudden we actually like figure out what's going on, but then we got to know why. And then when we know why, it's like, well, then how do they get out of this situation? And like the movie just keeps changing like constantly.
Yeah,
and that's one of the things I really like about it. It keeps it so like entertaining.
Yeah, each act is something almost completely different. It's kind of three different little storylines, I guess, with a through line.
Going to, I guess, like the part where they have to figure out how they're going to get out of it. Like once they've figured everything out and know all the motives. Michael Redgrave's character, he like climbs outside of the train, on the outside of the train.
Yeah. He's going to climb in to rescue
and
Froy,
climb over to the other window, where the nun and Mrs. Froy are. And like, I know that scene's not real, but like, I like when that other train is coming at him and like he jumps out of the way, like I kind of like snapped at it, like flinched of like, oh, I don't know. I know that it's not real, and I can like clearly see like what the special effects are that they're using to like accomplish that scene. It's like rear projection, which I can get into if you think that's worth getting into.
Well, I guess we can explain what rear projection is.
Rear projection is basically this process where they would film like a backdrop. And
when you say backdrop, so they'd film a scene essentially, and then they would project it.
Yeah, they would film a scene. So like if like two
Onto
characters are supposed to be like, say they're talking in front of the White House, and like you can't film a scene in front of the White House, so you shoot a shot of the White House, and then you have your two characters in the studio. You set up a screen behind them, and you project that shot that you shot of the White House behind them
onto that screen.
Onto that screen. So then it looks like they're talking in front of the White House.
It's the green screen.
And actually, it's something that I've always found like crazy impressive is that the way a shutter works in a camera is that half the time it's open to let the light and the image in, and then half the time it's closed.
Well, it's taking 24 pictures a second.
Yeah, it's taking 24 pictures a second, and so 24 times a second the shutter is open. 24 times a second the shutter is closed.
Right.
So it's close, open, close, open, close, open. When you're playing back a film roll like that, half of it is black, right? So when they would do these rear projections, they would have to sync up
both cameras,
both the camera and the projection, to where the shutters were open at the same time. That the image was there, because if they got it off, you would just have black on the screen behind them. Yeah. Which I think is, I can't even wrap my head around how to do that. Like where the technology is advanced, like way beyond we don't have to worry about that now or anything like that. But so I'm just like, I've always been crazy impressed by like rear projection and the process that goes into that. Which, a lot of people did it right. I don't know this is necessarily like a huge compliment to this movie for doing it right, but it's just impressive to me. But anyways, I that shot, like I flinched. My girlfriend flinched when we watched it. She was like, "Oh my god, that was intense," and I say it really well done.
Yeah. Like, once again, you see it's early Hitchcock, and you see where he's gonna go, and he's gonna do those things bigger and better later on. It's good here. Yeah. But later on, it's gonna be that he's gonna outdo himself.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Once they break Miss Froy out, and the brain surgeon guy, he figures out that they've switched her. So at this point he uncouples the train cars, right? When they're at the station, and so they take off. They take the train cars containing like Iris, Mrs. Froy, the two British guys, all these other characters.
We actually haven't talked about them yet at all. the lawyer that wants to be a judge and his mistress.
His mistress, yeah. So the two characters who get kind of wrapped up in this thing, unwilling. They're not in on this plot to kill Mrs. Freud. They're actually just there having an affair. Mm-hmm. And
he doesn't want to get wrapped up because he doesn't want to be part of a scandal. Like, oh, if he's part of this, his name's going to get mentioned with her name.
If they've seen a woman who like disappeared, that'll make the paper. Their names will be in it, and then people will find out that they're together, not with like their respective husband and wife, which I think actually is funny.
Yeah, it is. And she hatches a plan at some point, the mistress, to get. She's like, I can get him to divorce his wife, or the wife to divorce him, by doing that.
Yeah.
And so for a little while, she says, I saw her.
Yeah, it's interesting. You know, when I originally read the synopsis of like how does an entire train like get in on this, and like why is this entire train gonna want her? And it's interesting that all the other like motives that people have for like
to deny,
to lie,
yeah.
And
the best being because of cricket.
For sure, yeah, 100%. Getting to a cricket game is important. Okay, so they uncouple the train, they get them off by themselves. The train stops, and the brain surgeon guy. It seems like he's had like. They're Nazis, right?
They were chasing,
police officers like waiting outside the train, right?
I think they're Nazis. They look like them, but they're part of that fake country.
Okay, yeah. Maybe they're not literal Nazis, but maybe.
Yeah, I guess so. But they are definitely a representation of Nazis. Yeah, I think so. When he uncoupled the train and sent him off into on the other track. I think that's when he told him to make sure that they follow him and they'll catch up to him. Yeah.
So they stop the train, and then they basically get outside the train and have like everyone inside the train pinned in. Mm-hmm. Then the movie turns again into like this standoff, like sort of gunfight, but like outside they all have guns, and inside I think they only have like 2 guns. They have like one, and then they
knocked one Nazi out. I'm doing air quotes. So they have his gun and several rounds, and then I think the lawyer had a gun. Yeah, the judge guy, the guy who's having an affair, has a gun, and he doesn't want to. Yeah, he doesn't use it. He's a pacifist, apparently. I don't know why the pacifist had a gun. Or maybe he just wanted to be a pacifist in this situation. So they have this gun battle. We find out that Mrs. Freud is like holding like government secrets that are encoded by like a tune. Oh yeah. And so she gives it to Michael Redgrave's character, who is a musician. Yeah, and she decides to leave the train. Yeah. And everybody's try to take off and run away. No, why would you do that? It seems like a horrible idea. And that lady can move. Yeah. That's my main thing that I took away from like when she takes off. She just takes off and runs. She's running faster than I am. Spry. Yeah. I would never catch her. Yeah. No matter like what distance. So she's actually a spy essentially. I don't think we said that, but she just takes off into the woods, and that was pretty awesome. She just books it, and then of course like there's a gunshot, and like it seems like she might have like fell down or like jump out of shot. So we don't really know what happened to her. And so they're continuing the shootout back inside the train. This is actually where my favorite Charles and Caldecott moment comes. Is one of them is saying like we should just go out there like and first reason with them, talk to them. I don't know if it's Charles or Caldecott. I can't remember which one's which, but the one of them goes like to the door and he like starts to step out, and immediately he's like shot in the hand, and he has like zero reaction. Did you think that he was dead? I thought for a second, I thought he might be dead. I was like, oh no, he's been shot. And like, I just assumed that like it's the kind of thing that would happen. Then they would just like kill off one of like the most lovable characters and have that be kind of a shock. But yeah, it's he says nothing. He has like zero reaction, and he walks all the way back. Then like holds up his hand, and we see like, oh, he's just been shot in the hand, and still like in his normal like tone of voice he's been speaking in the whole movie, he just like basically says like, yep, you're right, we can't go talk to him. Like really blankly. And that got like the biggest laugh from me. Like it was pretty funny. And I guess it's just that dry like British sense of humor from like a general standpoint, but like that felt like a moment like that I would see in like a Wes Anderson film. Mm-hmm. I could see that. Yeah. like this underreaction to something big that has happened.
Yeah. Which is it's what he does a lot. So I'm sure he's seen this film and other British films.
Yeah. This is a good time, I think, to talk about. This is 1938. It's the same year that Jean Renoir made The Grand Illusion. But is it kind of an analogy? Like the British want to stay out of this war, they don't want a part of it, and they're kind of trying to stay out of it. Is it a commentary at all? Or am I reading too much into it?
I don't know. I actually certainly have not thought about the movie in that way at all. Like, I think on the whole, this movie didn't really make me think a lot, as opposed to like some of the other movies that we've watched so far. That kind of had these like deeper messages and ways to think about them on a deeper level. I was just kind of like super entertained.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I haven't really thought about it that way. But if you bring it up and I start thinking about it, like, I think maybe it's something I would pay attention to, like on a rewatch. But so we have like you said, the English guys, they kind of want to stay out of it.
Well, everybody basically wants to stay out of it. The English guys, and the lawyer, want to stay out of it. Like just by being on that train, they may think they can stay out of it, but they're involved. And I think, I don't know, maybe I'm stretching it a bit, but I think that's a good metaphor for England in the war.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if those caricatures of like the people from those countries existed because of that. Mm-hmm. Like rather than like, maybe it's not necessarily a metaphor, but just like...
It's just an interesting thought. Like, is it a commentary on the current events in 1938? Or, I think you're right. I think ultimately this is an entertaining film, but I don't know if, like, maybe, that was...
Yeah, I guess what I'm saying is that I don't know that it's done to make a commentary, but it may be derived from that situation. So in the movie, one of the cops that's shooting from them outside got in, and the one that they had knocked out, and they taken the gun. He wakes up and he holds everybody at gunpoint, right? Mm-hmm. And during this, Michael Redgrave is trying to like get the train back onto its normal track so they can continue on their course and get to safety.
And one of the British guys goes to the front, right?
Yeah. So they do that, right? Like they switch the tracks, they get to safety. The bad guys are defeated. They deliver the message. They find out Mrs. Froy made it.
Yeah, actually,
everyone's happy.
Sorry.
You want to talk about that?
Yeah. Well, just a little thing. So Miss Froy, they're on the train, right? Miss Froy just takes off into the woods, and they're on a train, and yet somehow Miss Froy still makes it back before them.
Yeah.
That's
how they also got married.
I thought they
between.
I thought they did that afterwards.
Aren't they? They're outside, and they're like. Are they talking about they're going to get married?
They're talking about they're like waiting to see whoever Miss Froy sent them to see, and they're talking about getting married because she called off her wedding, and then
that's what it was. She has called off her wedding already at that point,
and somehow I feel like they went immediately there.
You would think they would, yeah. So I think that's a smart assumption.
Yeah. But I like that. Whether or not. I'm not. It's just that Miss Froy's so awesome, so badass.
Yeah.
That she still beat them.
She's fast.
Yeah, she ran the whole way.
She is insanely fast, based on the one shot we see of her just booking it through the woods. It's not that easy to run through the woods. It wasn't like she's not even running down a path.
Hopping over logs and stuff.
It's incredible. So all that happens, and this is the first thing that my girlfriend asked when the movie was over. And I hadn't even really thought about it because I was just going along with the story. But it's like, so what happened to the guy that was holding them at gunpoint? Because he's in the car, he's holding them at gunpoint, and then we cut to Redgrave and the guy dealing with like trying to switch the tracks.
Well, the nun goes out there and switches the tracks, and she gets shot.
The nun switches the tracks, she gets shot, then it takes off to safety, and then we never cut back inside the train again. Like
I thought she comes back, or did she go on the front of the train?
She might get on
because she
front
gets
of the
shot,
train.
And she's like,
but we never cut back into like the last we saw that officer was holding those people at gunpoint.
Wasn't there a bluff though? One of the other guys had the gun in his pocket, and it was a bluff. No, that's what happened. So they're getting held at gunpoint by that guy, and the heroine is like, you only have one gun. or one bullet left.
Yeah.
So you can shoot me, and then everybody's going to take you. So like, and I think he kind of gives up at that point.
I think it's assumed probably that like he couldn't realistically take them all down, but
Yeah.
like we never actually see that
Like
guy
him
like
get arrested
give
or
up,
anything, yeah.
get arrested, them like take the gun away. I don't know how important that is,
Yeah, I think the logic,
but it felt unresolved.
unresolved. I think the logic of it, where she reasons him like, look, you can shoot one of us, but if you do, then you have no power over us anymore. You know, like, so I think at that point, like, he doesn't have any power. Like, he can shoot one bullet, but he's not going to win.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So
I just think like on a personal level, I would like to see the scene where he is like,
What
at
if-
least like you're right, and then he hands the gun back to them and like gives up and turns himself in.
Or his way out is to line everybody up in a single file line and then shoot them all at
shoot
once.
him. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I assume he didn't do that.
Realistic.
Another scene I would like to see him try.
Yeah.
Well, that seems potentially very funny.
Yeah.
So yeah, is there anything else that you really want to talk about with Lady Vanishes?
I think that's just about it. I really enjoyed this film. I think out of the three that we've watched so far, it's probably, I mean, it's a great film, but it's early Hitchcock. It's great to watch because you get to see his first footstep, I think, and you recognize later on the journey that he's made to be the great. But I'm not sure that I would put this up with Vertigo or Rear Window. I like this movie a lot. Don't get me wrong, but yeah, that's kind of where it is for me.
Chris hated it. Everyone. That's what I'm gathering from this. Yeah, no, you're right. It's really fun. It's really good. It's really entertaining. It's something that I could like show to somebody, I think, with like no interest in like classic or art films at all.
Yeah.
And like I think they would enjoy it.
Yeah, it's an hour and a half, so it's a short movie. It's a fun movie, and you're right. Like I had a friend would watch it with me that doesn't like old movies as much. But I told him that it was going to be Alfred Hitchcock, and he's like, "I'll be right over." You know, like
Sure.
So he knew Alfred Hitchcock, and he came over, and he really enjoyed, especially that opening sequence. He was laughing quite a bit.
Yeah, and I think like as opposed to the other two films we've done so far, Grand Illusion and Seven Samurai, there's not as much to like really dive into and talk about from like a.
I think that there's technically stuff that you could talk about a little bit more, but like the rear projection stuff like that in the beginning of Alfred Hitchcock, you know, like
Yeah, I think the things from like you can really talk about it a lot in terms of like filmmaking techniques and story and plot and like humor and how like what's working with that, but like you know we can't discuss like how this ultimately says something about what's coming in World War II or what happened in World War I. But you know nothing wrong with that. I think it's a great movie. It's super fun.
Yep.
Okay, so that does it for The Lady Vanishes. Chris, do you want to tell them about next week's film?
Absolutely. I'm excited about next week's film. It's Spine number 4, if you're following along. It's Amarcord by Federico Fellini.
Is it for Federico or Federico?
Federico? I always said Federico probably sounds right. I just always call him Fellini.
Yeah, just say
Federico
it.
Fellini.
Get the hard part out of there.
So this movie is going to be available on Filmstruck. You can subscribe to it for $10.99 a month. Really good service, especially for these older films. You can learn a lot of stuff about. It's also available to rent on most of the other on-demand platforms: YouTube, Amazon, iTunes. Like they're cheap.
Yeah,
so
everywhere you can rent a movie.
Yeah. So you guys watch it. We record on Sundays. So send in a question if you have any questions, or if you have questions or comments on this week's episode. Send them in.
Yeah, if you have any like specific points in the movie you think we should discuss and kind of make sure that we discuss like what you want to hear about, you can comment or you can email us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So moving on, we're going to move on to our top 3. If you're a first-time listener to the segment where Chris and I, we name our top 3 films in whatever category. This week we've chosen train films to go along with The Lady Vanishes.
Surprisingly robust catalog of train films.
Yeah, and I think we might have been a little generous, and some of them are like films that feature trains like extensively, even if it's not like entirely set on a train.
Yeah.
At least for me, I know.
For me, it was just kind of any train. I looked
if there's a train involved
Yeah,
in any way, we're a little generous. But yeah, when we came up with the idea, I actually thought there may not be enough.
Yeah,
Like there may not be
that's
enough
what I
movies
thought.
for it. And as soon as I started researching it, I was like, oh, yep,
Plenty.
there's a ton. So yeah, Chris, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, in no particular order. My
Mistake.
first one is, you might see a theme here. It's Throw Mama from the Train with Billy Crystal and Danny DeVito. Which actually is a remake of an Alfred Hitchcock movie.
Which one?
We'll find out here in a little bit.
Okay.
But yeah, it's really funny. It's a comedic take on it.
I've never seen Throw Mom from the Train.
You should. It's really good.
Yeah.
Kate Mulgrew is in it. She was the captain on Star Trek Voyager, and she's now in.
Nerd.
Yeah, you're right. But she's in Orange Is the New Black too.
Okay, so my first, I think I'm going to go in order. Yeah, why not? Yeah.
Wait, so is this your most favorite or
this
your
is
least favorite?
my third.
Okay.
I was going to end with the best one.
Okay. Yeah.
I think. So yeah, my third. It features trains. Hugo, the Martin Scorsese film. A lot of it takes place in like a train station.
Okay.
And there's trains coming in and out all the time. I don't know if anyone ever we actually have a scene inside of a train. Ever? I don't think we do.
I've never seen
But-
Hugo.
Never seen it?
No, this is like his only animated film. Was it animated?
It's not animated.
What?
No.
Why did I think it was
I don't know. It
animated?
was 3D when it came out.
Oh.
That was kind of a big deal. I think it was Scorsese's first 3D
okay.
movie.
That may be.
But it's not animated. But it actually, like, as a film person, there's a lot of film history in it, and I just really like it. It's a really fun like family film. I watched it in theaters. I watched it again with like my brother when he was younger and my cousin, and they really enjoyed it. I think it's super fun. Sacha Baron Cohen is in it, and he's really, really great in it. Like one of my favorite of his performances. That's not Borat. But yeah, so you want to give us your next one?
Yeah, it is actually the original Throw Your Mama from the Train, or Throw Mama from the Train. Strangers on a Train, which is the serious version of that movie. Both of those are really great movies. And I think Strangers on the Train may be a Criterion movie, but it's...
I don't think so.
No?
Not that I know of. If it is, it's more recent, and
Okay.
I'm somehow forgetting that they released it. But
Yeah, so I really enjoy... It's basically the same plot. Two strangers decide to make a pact to kill... So they're like, nobody will ever figure it out. Like, you have something that we want, or a problem that you need removed from your life. I'll do it. I'll kill him for you, and then you won't ever... There's no motive for me killing him. And then you'll have an alibi, and we can get away with it. And yeah, it's really good.
yeah, Strangers on a Train I have seen, so
Okay.
maybe I don't need to watch Throw Mama from the
I
Train.
think you do. Because
I'll just imagine that one funnier.
yeah. What's your second?
Number 2 for me is Cary Grant, North by Northwest.
I hate you.
And by the way that you're shaking your head and saying that you hate me, I assume that you hate me. Do you have
podcast
this
is
one on
over.
here?
Yeah, that's my next one.
The next one. Well, I guess we could just generally talk about it. Like,
Yeah.
it's one of the great, like, sort of like action thriller movies.
Speaking of visual gags, it's probably one of the Alfred Hitchcock's best visual gags with the train as Cary Grant and who's the girl in North by Northwest?
I don't know. Off the top of my head.
But they are about to consummate, if you will, their
Yes.
relationship. And then the train goes, like they cut from that, and then the train goes in the
Yeah.
hole. And
100% my favorite train scene.
yeah.
That's
Yeah.
great. I literally, like, I laughed out loud when that happened, like, for the first time I ever watched that movie. Because that's one of those reasons that, like, I thought, you know, at some point Lady Vanishes was going to end, like, abruptly. Was because of, like, how abrupt, like, North by Northwest ends. Because essentially, he, like, the girl's hanging off the rock, and he, like, reaches down, and he's like, get up here. And then it cuts to them in the train, and he's pulling her up onto the bed. They have, like, a little brief exchange. They're in love. And then, like, cut to that train, like, barreling into the tunnel. It's just great, and it all happens so fast. And amazing use of a train.
Yeah, absolutely. So we both picked that one. So what's your
so my
your
last one, my number one, is The General, Buster Keaton. I'm a huge Buster Keaton fan.
I've strongly considered this one as well.
Did you?
I'm glad I didn't, although I did pick basically the same movie from the other two. But I strongly considered this one.
Yeah, I think it's really good. I watched it a couple times in film class, and one time I was visiting my dad when he was living in Atlanta, which is where Turner Classic Movies is based. And it was during the summer, they were doing like a classic film every week, like every Friday night or something like that.
Oh, really? You went and saw it in the theater?
So I went and saw it in a theater, and they actually had one of like the big like organs that they would play the score on. It was a really old theater. It's called like the Fox Theater in Atlanta. And they actually had a guy who had composed the live score to go along with the general. I think this was the same year that they had released like a brand new restoration of it as well.
Okay.
So I took my dad, who had no interest because it was like a silent film. He loved it. He thought it was hilarious.
Buster Keaton's hilarious.
Yeah, which it is, like, hands down. It's an amazing movie. Like, that experience was like really cool, and I don't know if that makes me biased towards that movie just a little bit, but
maybe a little.
I've watched it a ton of times, and like every time I watch it, it's just funnier and funnier and like better and better. And I just, in my opinion, like just one of the best movies ever made.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Got to be in there. It might find its way towards the top 3 if we did top 3 movies ever. Yeah. So it's got to be in my train top 3.
It's no basketball, but
yeah. I mean, basketball, general, just underneath. The general might could reach up and touch basketball if it stood on its tiptoes. Okay, so that's it then for this episode. Obviously, thank you guys for listening, but we also want to do some special thank yous. One for Jake Wagner Russell, who created our intro and outro music. You can find more of his music on soundcloud.com/bopscotch. It's bopscotch, like hopscotch, but with a B. And then we also just wanted to thank a mutual friend of ours named Mike Johnson. He's been kind of listening to every episode, and
he's our beta listener.
Yeah, he's our beta listener. He listens to the episodes early and like kind of gives us pointers and tips as we're like starting the show and kind of figuring things out and giving us like feedback on it. And that all of that has been like extremely helpful. So thank you, Mike.
We just want to make sure we remind you guys, we are super excited about interacting with our listener base. We actually got to have some interaction this week on Reddit, the Criterion thread.
Yeah, we posted our episode in the Criterion subreddit, and it got some feedback, some comments.
Yeah, we had 4 people also give their top 3 sports movies last week, and that was really cool to read and listen to, or not listen to, but read. We just wanted to mention their names. Thanks so much, guys, for interacting with us. Awesomeness0232 is one of them. Pepper Smith 67, Mike from 5 to 7, and Cosmic Lottery. Thanks so much, guys, and I look forward to this week's interaction.
I think it was super fun reading top 3. So if anybody, not just on Reddit, if you want to comment on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, just like,
give us your top 3.
Back. Give us your top 3.
Or if you have any ideas for a top 3, send that in. We can do those.
Yeah, we really want to have as much like listener-driven content as possible. So it's really important that we grow our listener base, and one of the ways that you can do that is to review us on iTunes. So go ahead and give us like a 5-star review, even if you think we're 4 stars or 3 stars or no stars.
Give us 5 stars, and then you can say whatever you want to us in the actual review part of it. As long as you give us 5 stars, you can say whatever negative things.
Sure, yeah. But the 5 stars, it helps people see the podcast when they're searching for like Criterion or searching for podcasts on iTunes. Yeah, so go ahead and follow, and subscribe to us. You can like us on Facebook at facebook.com/casuallycriterion podcast. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at casualcriterion. You can also just directly email us at casuallycriterion@gmail.com. All of those are great ways to say hey to us, say whatever you want.
Get in touch.
We check all of those things.
Yeah. That's it for this week's show. Next week, Amarcord. Make sure you watch it, and we'll see you guys next week. Bye.
Bye-bye.